Who should the Buffalo Bills be targeting in free agency at wide receiver and defensive tackle? I'm sharing my top targets with you today on Locked On Bills.
You are Locked On Bills, your daily Buffalo Bills podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Bills Mafia? It's Joe Marino, author of the Herd Mentality Substack, co-host of the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast, co-host of the NFL First Read Podcast, and I'm your host of Locked On Bills. Want to thank you for making Locked On Bills your first listen every day, and a big welcome and shout out to our everydayers. You know who you are. Those of you who never miss a single episode, I appreciate y'all being here very, very much. I'd also like to invite you to subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Well, folks, welcome in. It is time to unpack my favorite targets for the Buffalo Bills in free agency at wide receiver and defensive tackle, two of the primary needs for this football team. I also think cornerback and defensive end are primary needs, and guess what? We'll talk about them tomorrow, and I'll preview my top targets at those positions. And so what I really want to focus on in these free agency previews are my favorite targets at positions of primary need. And so I've identified those as wide receiver, defensive tackle, cornerback, and defensive end. So we're going to talk about a bunch of players today that I like, a couple of buyer beware prospects, one that has been linked to the Bills. We'll talk about him coming up, but a lot of different stuff to unpack today. Let's dive into it. And let me start by saying this. I'm going to give you a bunch of options today. There's trades. There's the NFL draft. There are a lot of different ways for this puzzle to come together. Let it play out. I implore everyone every offseason to let it play off. Brandon Beane's job isn't to have the roster ready to go in a week or in a month or in 2 months. There's plenty of time for this to all play out. So we're all going to have our favorite ideas. There's a bunch of different ways to get it done, and just let it play out. Roster construction is literally a 12-month-a-year deal. And so if the Bills get through next week and Monday's the first day of the negotiating window, and the only thing that they did was sign some 8th-year linebacker that's going to be a reserve, don't lose your mind. Please don't lose your mind. We see this happen way too often. So just keep that in mind as we really get into these offseason discussions. And keep in mind, there's a lot of different ways to get these things done. We'll start with the wide receivers, and I want to start with my two favorite targets in free agency. Obviously, the Bills have two big expiring contracts at receiver in Amari Cooper and Mac Hollins. And so your returning players are Keon Coleman, Khalil Shakir, and Curtis Samuel. So you want to fill this thing out around them. And so I think there's a lot of different combinations that will make sense. And perhaps it's a free agent move plus a draft pick. Maybe it's two free agents. Maybe it's two draft picks. But for the sake of this conversation, we're focusing in on my favorite receiver targets in free agency and my number one guy. And maybe this is a name that's not going to excite you or anything like that, but I just feel like the skill set, the upside, the value speaks to me in a big way. And that's Josh Palmer. Josh Palmer has been a receiver for the Los Angeles Chargers. He was a 2021 third-round pick. He turns 26 in September, comes in a little over 6'1", 210 pounds, 33-inch arms, has a RAS score of a 7.59 out of 10. This past season, 39 catches, 584 yards, and a touchdown. And so you're probably thinking, Joe, really? I push play on this for you to tell me that your favorite option in free agency is Josh Palmer? Yeah. It's exactly where I'm at with it. Like I said, there's going to be a lot of layers to what makes Josh Palmer very attractive to me, starting with the combination of age, skill set, and value. You know, the Bills do have a little bit more flexibility this year than they have in past years, but it doesn't mean you're not trying to find value. And I think that there's a lot of upside with Josh Palmer. And I think that's something to keep in mind when you're considering free agent targets. You want some players that are available for a reason, right? Teams aren't in the business of just letting good players that they drafted leave in free agency. Why are they available? I think when you look at the Chargers, they're a team that I've identified as one that has probably the biggest decisions of any team out there that's not looking for a quarterback. Their list of expiring contracts is massive. Josh Palmer wasn't drafted by this regime, and I can see him hitting the market. And look, as a third-round pick, he hasn't necessarily produced in a way that you'd like, right? I think there's probably some more production that they wish they got out of Josh Palmer. And I think that's what makes him attractive for the Bills. And so what I love about Josh Palmer is route running. This guy's a route runner. He's a route winner. This is a guy that can get open against man, can get open against zone. And that ability to get open against man is huge. Been talking about this for a while now, but the Bills have faced the highest percentage of man coverage of any team in the NFL over the last 2 seasons. And to me, that is a direct reflection on the lack of respect that opponents have for the Buffalo Bills outside wide receivers. They're unconcerned with their ability to live on an island against the Bills receivers. Well, Josh Palmer has great route running metrics, and the film is very good as well. According to the Fantasy Points data suite, which I think is a tremendous resource, Brett Whitefield and the team over there does an amazing job with advanced metrics. This is some numbers that they have on Josh Palmer's route running. 141 receivers last year ran at least 100 routes in the NFL. Josh Palmer was number 5 in route win rate against man coverage, number 10 out of 141 against zone, number 5 in route win rate from the slot, and number 13 in route win rate from the outside. And yes, he is primarily an outside receiver. That's what the Bills need. And when you watch the tape, you can see a very technical route runner, a guy that is very consistent with his leverage. He does a very good job of making every route look the same. And then the way he sets up his breaks is very good. Now, he's not electric, right? This isn't a guy that's just super dynamic with separation quickness, but he's a technician. And obviously the data supports his ability to get open. Oh, by the way, he's got really good hands. I think he had 1 drop last year, and the efficiency metrics are exceptional. And so the volume stats, you're not going to be impressed. 39 catches, 584 yards, right? I mean, that's not going to move the needle. But in terms of efficiency metrics, EPA per target, you're talking about a very, very high-ranking player. And so there's just a really nice profile here. Oh, by the way, Spot Rack estimates that his contract comes in at $4.3 million a season. PFF has it projected at $6.5 million per season. And I think that's a really good value for the Bills for a player with really sure hands, good size, youth, route running ability to come in and maybe sign a 2-year, $11 million deal, 2-year, $12 million deal. That's good value that really addresses the position in exactly the ways that the Bills need help. No, I didn't sit here and pitch you on T. Higgins. I'm sorry I didn't do that. But in terms of a value play, this is very, very attractive for me. And so Josh Palmer, very high on my list of players I hope the Bills sign in free agency. Let me tell you about one more here, and then we'll get to a break. Darius Slayton from the New York Giants. He turns he turns 29 next January. So this will be his age 28 season. 5th round pick of the Giants back in 2019, 6'1", 190 pounds, 32 3/4 inch arms, 10-inch hands. He's a 4.3 guy in terms of 40-yard dash. So you want speed and verticality, you get that from Darius Slayton. This past season, 39 catches, 573 yards, 2 touchdowns. Obviously, the Giants' quarterback situation was a mess. And so you combine that with force-feeding the ball to Malik Neighbors, and obviously it wasn't a great year in terms of volume stats for Darius Slayton, but he has been a very productive player relative to the Giants. In his 6 seasons with the Giants, he led the team in receiving for 4 of them. And again, the stats aren't going to blow you away, but when you remember the quarterbacks that they've had with the Giants, it's going to make a lot more sense. I love this also about Darius Slayton. 80% of his snaps come out wide. And so you get the field stretching ability that this team needs, the speed that this team needs, some upside as a player that's been productive on a bad team. Oh, by the way, you really need perimeter players. You need guys that can win on the outside. And so I love that about him. He's been healthy. He's played in 92 of 99 career games, and that's very attractive to me. Now, the thing about Slayton that you kind of have to live with is he does have a history with drops. His career drop rate is 11%. It was 15.2% in 2024 alone. It's been above 10% in 4 of 6 seasons. So there's some give and take with him, and he's definitely going to be more expensive. Spot Rack has him projected at $15.8 million per season. PFF says $12.5 million per season. So this is going to be a more expensive player, but you get the speed, you get durability, you get decent size, you get a guy that can play on the outside. I think he's a very clean projection to the Bills, and probably a player that for the Giants has run his course. And so those are my top 2 wide receiver targets in free agency for the Bills, Josh Palmer and Darius Slayton. Pair that with Mac Hollins coming back and maybe a draft pick, and I like the makeup of this wide receiver room. I'm not done talking receivers. On the other side of it, there's another value receiver that I like as a field stretcher, and then we got to talk about Hollywood Brown because there's been some rumblings there, so we'll do that here on the other side of it. Folks, be sure to stick with me. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on it than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip-off or want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. I love using FanDuel's live betting feature because it keeps every moment of the game exciting. Whether I'm backing my team for a late-game rally or picking a player to hit a clutch 3, I never feel like I miss my chance. Plus, the app is easy to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets. If your first $5 bet wins, just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, I said that there's a bargain bin receiver that really intrigues me, and his name is Tutu Atwell. And what's interesting is I've been on a bit of a journey with Tutu Atwell because I didn't love him as a prospect coming out of Louisville. I was floored when the Rams picked him in the 2nd round. And then I watched his tape from this past season, and he's got me pretty intrigued. Let's talk about it. So Tutu Atwell, he turns 26 in October, 2021 2nd-round pick of the Rams, number 57 overall. He is small, 5'9", 155 pounds, really small, 29.25-inch arms, 8 7/8 inch hands. And so I'll go ahead and say this part before I go any further. This is not the player that you signed to be your answer. This is a player that you signed to be part of your solution to give your offense some speed. So don't get it twisted. When I say Tutu Atwell, that doesn't mean that every problem that the Bills have at receiver is addressed, but certainly as part of the group, I think he'd be a very good addition. So I mentioned that he's small. He's fast, though, runs a 4.39 40-yard dash. He, in 2024, had 7 deep catches. So those are 20 yards or more down the field on 11 targets. So very good efficiency on the deep ball. His overall production profile had 42 catches for 562 yards last season with the Rams. And so what I really liked about Tutu was the film. I thought the route running was really good. And he's a player that, of course, threatens defenses vertically down the field. There's no question about that. And you could tell that opposing defenses really respected that about him. And so because they're very concerned about not giving up vertical leverage, when Tutu's able to kind of snap off those route stems and run a deep out or a dig or, kind of work back down the stem, a ton of separation exists. And so, I'm watching Matthew Stafford throw deep outs to Tutu Atwell because the corner is so concerned about Tutu getting behind them. And that combination of Matthew Stafford's arm talent and Tutu Atwell's separation ability because of the threat of the verticality, you saw a lot of production on some deep outs. And that was very much something that I can see working with Josh Allen. And I think just that vertical element really, really is a threat, and that opens up a lot for him. And then I think also it opens up a lot for the offense, right? When you have somebody that can lift the roof off of a defense, it's going to open up your spacing underneath. And so I love the all-around impact that Tutu could have for the Bills on offense. Now, like I said, this is a specialized player, right? He's not going to come in and command 75 or more targets, but 50 to 70 targets, working the deep stuff, I really like it, especially when you consider Spot Rack has him projected for a contract at $4 million a season. And so, he's 25 to start the year, speed, value. I like all that. I think that makes a lot of sense. So give me Josh Palmer and Tutu Atwell. That'd be great. You can get that done potentially for under 10 million APY. I mean, that's kind of what I'm looking for at receiver. I don't think the Bills need to go out and go crazy here. Now, if they could trade for DK Metcalf, boy, I wouldn't be mad about that. But I don't think this is a Bills situation where they have to really go crazy to add. I think a couple of pieces like this makes a lot of sense to me. Now, let's have the Hollywood Brown conversation. We got to get into this because there's some reports. There was an article written by Jeremy Fowler, and it references that Josh Allen has his eyes on Hollywood Brown. So let's talk about him. And I think there's some very much buyer beware things about Hollywood Brown. 28 years old, or he turns 28 in June. First round pick of the Ravens back in 2019. He's also small, 5'9", 166 pounds, 30.5-inch arms, 9-inch hands. We don't have a verified 40-yard dash on him, but he's fast. There's no question about it. Obviously, last year, the season kind of got away from him. He missed 15 games due to a sternoclavicular, good Lord, I hope I said that right, sternoclavicular injury. And so, first year with the Chiefs, misses 15 games, kind of comes back later on in the year. So the production profile last year is not very impressive. 14 catches on 28 targets for 141 yards. And so the idea of Hollywood Brown is exciting, right? You think about the player he was at Oklahoma, the big year 3 he had with Baltimore, some of the flashes he had with Arizona, right? I get it. The idea of Hollywood Brown is attractive, but there's some major red flags here, starting with the injury history. And I'm really not interested in signing up for players with injury histories. I'm done with it. I really am. Hurt guys are just hurt, right? They just are. And so looking at this guy's injury history, it is alarming. 2018 suffered a left foot injury that required the Liz Frank surgery, sidelined him for the entire pre-draft process. 2019 missed 2 games with an ankle sprain. 2020, he missed practice time in 2 different weeks due to a knee patella sprain. 2021 missed a game due to a thigh bruise. 2022 missed 5 games due to a foot fracture. 2023 missed 3 games with a heel injury, and then 15 games this past season with the whatever the heck it is, the sternoclavicular injury. It's a lot, right? It's a lot on a small player that's 166 pounds. And so there's that. But oh, by the way, can we be honest about the lack of vertical production that he's had? Over the last 4 seasons, 21, 22, 23, and 24, he's been targeted 70 times, 70 times on throws 20 yards or more down the field. He has 13 catches. There's not been any efficiency. And that includes a large chunk of that coming with Kyler Murray, his college quarterback. So he's hurt, and he hasn't even really been good at the thing that you fantasize about him being good at as a vertical receiver. So I think this is very much a buyer beware player. And if the Bills sign him, we'll root for his success and hope that it works out. But there's enough here that has me concerned that I'd stay away. Spot Rack projects an $8 million per year contract. PFF says $9 million. I'd much rather have Palmer and Atwell for that than just Hollywood Brown when you consider the injury history and just the absolute lack of vertical receiving production really over the last 4 seasons. Again, 13 catches on 70 targets. And of course, vertical targets are inefficient to begin with. 13 on 70? Boy, that's rough. Real quick, I want to throw out a couple of bargain bin names there because I would like for the Bills to just bring back Mac Hollins. But if the Bills wanted that 5th receiver that gives them a size element that also can maybe make a play occasionally, but gives a lot of special teams upside, here's some names for you. Ashton Doolin, Noah Brown, Nick Westbrook-Ikine, Chris Conley, and Zach Pascal. So, again, just bring back Mac Hollins. I'd like him over any one of those players, but if for some reason that doesn't work out, there's plenty of savvy veteran size receivers that can play special teams, block, and occasionally make a play down the field for you. So, again, step one, bring back Mac Hollins. If not, those are some players to be mindful of. All right, on the other side of it, we're talking defensive tackles. I've got a couple that I really like, a bargain bin guy and a buyer beware guy as well. So, folks, be sure to stick with me. All right, welcome back, folks. Let's talk defensive tackles. And the need here is pretty obvious. I mean, the Bills need more impact from the defensive tackles. I thought they were the most underperforming position group on the team last season. And you've got Ed Oliver back. You've got Daquan Jones back. You've got Dwayne Carter back. But you do have 3 expiring contracts because by the end of the season, you rostered 6 of these guys. And so Austin Johnson's expiring. Quentin Jefferson's expiring. Jordan Phillips is expiring. I think the Bills would like to roster 5. And so you definitely got room for a couple players right now as things currently stand. And with all due respect to Dwayne Carter as a 3rd-round pick, he doesn't prevent me from anything. Right? Like, there's nothing about Dwayne Carter that's going to force me off of any move. I'd love for Dwayne Carter to be a thing, but he didn't show me anything as a rookie that makes me think, boy, we got to reserve 35% of our snaps for that guy. And then, of course, I think you need a legitimate player at nose to go with Daquan Jones and potentially to succeed Daquan Jones. Going to be options in the draft, but we're focused on free agency right now. I want to start with my buyer beware guy. And this is a name that I think will just be popular. And so I want to address it, and it's Milton Williams. Milton Williams, 2021 3rd-round pick of the Eagles, 26 years old. Returns 26 in April. Smaller defensive tackle, 6'3", 290, 31.5-inch arms. Big-time athlete, though, a 996 RAS score. And, of course, he had a very productive season this past year. 17.6% pass rush win rate, 7.9 pass rush productivity, and 54 pressures was really good. I think he had 2 sacks in the Super Bowl. There's a lot of appeal there. SpotRack says $12 million a season. PFF has it at $21 million. The idea of Milton Williams is good. I would love to have Milton Williams. I don't think he's a very clean projection for the Bills. I don't think, first of all, you're not really going to want to play him on rundowns with Ed Oliver, right? So I think right there that becomes a complicating thing because you're not going to have 2 small defensive tackles on the field together on rundowns. That's just going to be a challenge for you. And then for Milton Williams, he's really just been a rotational guy. 36 to 48% of snaps across his 4 seasons. And he had a great season, and it's always a little bit peculiar to me when a guy has a great season that is not like anything they did prior in a contract year. And so I'm not debating that Milton Williams wouldn't be a good addition for any defense, but when you're talking about this type of investment for a player that doesn't pair well with Ed Oliver, that peaked in a contract year, that has been really a part-time player, the dollars don't make sense to me here. And so unless the Bills were like fundamentally changing the way that they play defense, this would be a player that wouldn't be high on my list for the Bills to pursue. So with that out of the way, let's talk about some players I would like the Bills to pursue. And these are going to be more along the lines of nose tackles because I think that's where the biggest need is, where they need snaps and impact right now. We'll start with a couple of veterans. DJ Jones. He just turned 30 back in January, 6th-round pick back in 2017 by the Niners, 6'1", 320, 32.5-inch arms, RAS score of a 708. SpotRack says $11 million a season. PFF has it at $9 million a season. So this is like very much your classic A-gap defender. I think he's probably a better fit in Buffalo versus Denver, where Denver plays odd fronts in more of a control your gap type role, where I think you get a chance to be more of a penetration style nose for Buffalo. And I like that for DJ Jones, who's got a lot of juice. This guy, one of the hottest motors you'll ever see. That's what, really drew to me. I watched him back at Ole Miss and I loved him. And then he goes to the 49ers and is a late round pick and he was good for them. And then he's been good for the Broncos. And so this is just kind of a brand player for me that I've always rooted for and really enjoyed whenever he plays. And so of course I'd like him on the Bills. Do I like the price tag here? Not really. But I think you could platoon him with Daquan and have one heck of a pair. It'd be an expensive pair and a north of 30 pair, but a good pair nonetheless. Let's talk BJ Hill. He turns 30 in April, was a third-round pick of the Giants, 6'3 1/4", 311 pounds, 33-inch arms, RAS score of an 885. SpotRack says $9 million a season. PFF says 10 1/4 per season. When I think BJ Hill, I think stability. I think this guy has been the model of consistency across his 7 NFL seasons. He's only missed 2 games in his career. Very steady impact across every year as a pass rusher and a run defender. And he's been a high volume of the snaps guy. In each of the last 3 seasons, he's played north of 70% of snaps. Just durable, consistent, reliable, balanced. I mean, I think you know exactly what you're getting. And so you'd love to bring him in, and he could split time with Daquan this year, probably start for a couple of seasons and feel like you're in good shape with your nose tackle spot. So BJ Hill would be a player I'd welcome. But the thing about DJ Jones and BJ Hill is that they're both on the wrong side of 30 and they're pretty expensive. And so that's why I'm not overly enamored. I think there are some bargain nose tackles that make a lot of sense to me. And so here's my number one target for the Bills at defensive tackle, and it's Bobby Brown. Bobby Brown from the Los Angeles Rams. He turns 25 in August, was a 4th-round pick of the Rams, 6'4", 321, 34 3/4-inch arms, 10.5-inch hands, RAS score of a 982 out of 10. And he's just kind of gotten better and better every year with the Rams and commanded more and more playing time. As a rookie, 3% of snaps, up to 27% of snaps in year 2, up to 36% of snaps in year 3, 42% in year 4. And this guy's made his hay as a run defender. I think he's been the best run defender on the Rams. I think there's a lot of untapped potential as a pass rusher, given the length, given the athleticism, and just he's been an early down player. He hasn't had a ton of opportunity. And you think about like pairing with Aaron Donald for the first few years of his career, and then they kind of have this Kobe Turner, Braden Fiske situation. So not a ton of chances to rush the passer, but I think there's untapped potential. And that's what really excites me about Bobby Brown. He's young, physically gifted, has gotten better and better, and I think there's untapped potential. When you think circumstantially about what he's been asked to do, I like it. I'd love this. This would be a player, I mean, like legitimately hope the Bills sign Bobby Brown. That's my guy. That's the guy I want at defensive tackle. And SpotRack doesn't even have an estimation for him. And so I don't think there's a lot of high expectations for what his deal is going to be, but I wouldn't blink at offering this guy like a 2-year, $8 million, 2-year, $10 million deal. Come on over. Let's develop that upside and feel like you get a steal here in free agency. So very high on Bobby Brown, especially because I think he'll come in half of what BJ Hill or DJ Jones will come in at. Couple other bargain free agents. Sebastian Joseph Day has been a name that a lot of Bills fans and content creators would have loved to have over the last several years. He's a free agent now, turns 30 in March, 6th-round pick of the Rams in 18, 6'4", 320. Estimations for him, $4.5 million a year. From SpotRack, would come in and be a good A-gap defender for Buffalo. And again, not a ton that you'd have to have invested there at $4.5 million APY. One other guy, Fali Fatukasi, most recently with the Texans, before that the Jets, turns 30 in March, 6'3", 311, 33-inch arms, RAS score of an 8.71. Contract projections coming in around $4 million. And I think he's proven himself exactly who he is as a nose tackle in the NFL that has some athleticism to go with, a quality run defense. So I think there's options. I think even if you go down to Roy Lopez or Greg Gaines, there's some options here for the Bills when it comes to nose tackles. It's just a matter of what you want to do. You want to go pay $10 million for a vet like BJ Hill or DJ Jones? You want to take an upside swing on a Bobby Brown? Just get the very stable Sebastian Joseph Day or Fali Fatukasi, or really go bargain bin with Roy Lopez or Greg Gaines? These are the types of players the Bills need to be thinking about adding. And so if you told me that the Bills signed Josh Palmer, Tutu Atwell, and Bobby Brown, and then you also draft a defensive tackle, I'd be pretty happy with that. Now, certainly looking for some bigger moves, potentially at defensive end and corner, but I think there's, like I said at the beginning of the show, a lot of different ways to get this done, a lot of different options, a lot of different ways that this puzzle can come together in the right way. And so hopefully we've been able to address some of the bigger ticket ways to do it, also some bargain conversations, and maybe a couple players in Milton Williams and Hollywood Brown that I personally wouldn't be interested in going after. So we're just getting started. Tomorrow, we're going to talk corners and defensive ends. We'll give you a bunch more names to dive into. I'm looking forward to that. Then later in the week, my mock offseason, where I'll go through and do all the stuff. I'll create the cap space. I'll sign the players. We'll do a mock draft. We'll put together a roster and give you an idea of what Brandon Beane can get done. But I'm excited to see, because there's definitely more flexibility and more opportunity this year than there has been the last couple of years. And I'm excited to see how Brandon Beane attacks this. And the good news is there's plenty of different ways to get it done. All right, folks, hope you enjoyed. Hope you come back tomorrow to hear about my ideas at defensive end and corner. And as always, I kindly ask that you share, subscribe, rate, and review. Have a great rest of your day. Go Bills. And I look forward to catching up with you again real soon.